The triumph that was the inaugural staging of Gather Round in Adelaide. Tens of thousands travelled, hundreds of thousands attended. It was one of the most powerful demonstrations of passion and the way that we engage with our game as everybody lived the mantra and came together in Adelaide.
I had Step Brothers vibes, you know. Did we just become best friends?
Did we just become best friends? Yup. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
Literally won every commissioner or president over on grand final day one by one. He turned up at the parade, if I remember, and it was the heaviest tag in history. And
I was a pest, mate.
You were a pest.
There is a real vibe around town.
Half of Australia's population has descended upon Adelaide. They've come from far and wide.
Feels a bit like grand final week, except every team's invited.
The whole town's been swept with footy fans just going crazy, jumpers, scarves everywhere. There's a buzz in this town.
The state has really embraced AFL football and it's been so much fun.
I remember I got a file on a Sunday. I was reading it at home and they said, the AFL's thinking about this idea of having every game in one place. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, it can only be here. And it's got nothing to do with me. It's actually the South Australian
24 hours, he was on my front door knocking.
But the South Australian people, they love their footy, right? We show up.
The best wins are those most unexpected. Gather around these Bombers. Shut the gate, number 6. Butters intervenes. Butters to seal it. Butters does it. That is a Himmelberg special. Oh, what a scare. What a weekend of football it's been.
It takes a bit of guts to do something different. They've done something different. They put their confidence in South Australians and they are turning up. And the rest of the country is coming here. And I think they'll have a pretty good time. It's a footy state. You know, we live and breathe this national game. Like, it's in our blood. And I think that's showing up in the vibe that's in the air at the moment.
The people answered the call. There are questions, there are learnings, but above all else, there is a splendid legacy here, Jace, to live through something that's, for the first time, that you know is going to outlast all of us. Is my children's children will be going to Gather Round one day, and it'll hark back to 2023 when the idea was first hatched in Adelaide.
It will. Are you a little surprised? I know the headlines read amazingly well, and we're talking big dollars, and it's a two-way street. The tourism impact there in South Australia is enormous. To tie it up for 4 years, I kind of thought it might have been a 2-year thing, and then let's test the waters. Let's let the other governments see what's going on here and maybe grow this even bigger and perhaps spread it around a little bit. Were you surprised they tied it in for 4 years?
There's discord in Western Australia where
there always is over there,
well,
Gerard.
You asked. So I think it was staged so brilliantly first up, and it is so natural to Adelaide that I thought they would lock it for 2 and they've ended up locking it for 3. So it becomes a 4-year block.
Yeah.
And then it will sort of be fully revealed and fully exposed, and it should be a pretty powerful force to go to market. But, yeah, there are those who are close to the bidding initially who are surprised that it was locked away. But that was the power of what Adelaide was able to do. And having thought about it a lot, I think in the McLaughlin years, this is the equal to anything that's happened in the men's competition. To have something capture people to such a degree instantly and make sense. And the most important part was it was a demonstration of the passion of the game. And it was everywhere. It was at the footy festival. We were there yesterday, and the line for Marcus Bontempelli's autograph and the line for Sam Draper's photo was kids with all different Guernseys, as the footballers were the heroes, not just the allegiance to the club.
I think we've got to take our hat off to Peter Malinauskas and the South Australian government, because they were aggressive. They wanted this and they virtually demanded this, and they did whatever it took to make it happen. So I think it's a pretty good partnership with the AFL, and as you say, it's now got 3 more years ahead, and it's only going to get bigger each year, I suspect.
The growth potential is everywhere. So part of today's question is, what would you do now? And I think it really only scratched the surface. So think about Adelaide Oval. For the Test match, they set up the Village Green.
Yep.
there's clearly an AFL equivalent there, which already runs in grand final week.
Which is the September Club, correct? Yeah.
I imagine that will be there. Norwood, the parade wasn't used to its full capacity. I think you would shut all of Norwood down and you could have any number of people and stalls in the street there. The Barossa is obviously going to be a centrepiece.
Everyone wants the Barossa.
You can imagine one of the biggest wine festivals ever staged in South Australia in the Barossa with the centrepiece of a game to work around it. McLaren Vale is clearly in the mix in the years to come. Somewhere like Glenelg.
Well, that's it.
The charm of Norwood.
Norwood worked really well. But let's have a look at some of the other suburban grounds as well, because the feel at suburban football, and I did the game, the Friday twilight game at Norwood Oval, it was outstanding. It took you back to a packed local crowd, 10,000 just jammed in there, and the atmosphere, you could hear everything that was going on.
So the tourism numbers were 65,000 people travelled for it. I don't think it's an overstatement to say twice as many will travel next year.
Yep.
And it does, so test matches, this is what Adelaide does so well. They run theoretically over 5 days. I wondered whether might you start on a Wednesday to sort of move people through the city, get the extra night, so maybe the first sets of families start to arrive on a Monday, start the round on a Wednesday, you've got your Thursday, Friday doubleheader. It takes a little bit of pressure out of those weekend games and the doubleheaders that we'll get to in a moment, and then still bring it to its conclusion in the Sunday twilight.
How are you managing the breaks for the team?
Yeah, so I think
you'll have to get that past the players.
Yes, but the new CBA should do that. It should mandate to some degree 5-day breaks, where that's been a sticking point. I think you treat it a little bit like Anzac Day. You go, there is going to be a short break that we're going to ask you to manage, knowing that there's a long break in the aftermath of it. So I think that's a possibility, because accommodation is going to be at an absolute premium with all travel. The double headers, we wouldn't do 2 double headers, and we certainly wouldn't do a double header with one of the Adelaide teams.
They don't need to, do they?
The Bulldogs-Port game didn't need to be part of a double header. I suspect there does need to be one, but there probably has to be a sophistication in the ticket selling of that. Do you want to go to a double header? Do you want to go to the first and you're happy to trade off your ticket to the second for somebody else, or the other way around?
Is that doable, though?
I don't know.
To move some out, not everyone out, but some out.
Our ticket agencies aren't that nimble at that. Might we just have a system where you just hand your ticket to someone on the... I'll meet you at the gate, set it all up via an app, the AFL app, and trade tickets on the way out. So I think there are a lot of people who really enjoyed the Sunday doubleheader, but equally, some Geelong and West Coast fans left and some St Kilda Collingwood fans arrived late, and so you had patches of the stadium that were empty, whereas if all 44,000 had been there at once, it'd be brilliant.
True. Let me ask you this then. A lot of people are saying it was too unfair an advantage for the local teams to have an extra home game for the season, and some are suggesting the showdown should be played there.
So this is, I'll say, this is
from a fairness basis, it makes sense.
Only to a degree, I think. This is the Victorian-centric thinking that drives South Australians mad. So the economics of Gather Round are completely different to a home and away game in the box office, the ticket sales. So the biggest cash grab for the South Australian clubs is their home showdown. So if you put one into Gather Round, that has enormous fiscal consequences. In fact, it simply can't be done. The other part is when the Crows host their showdown, very few Port fans get in. And when the Port fans host their showdown, fewer Crows fans get in the north. So you're actually excluding some of the locals from being able to go and support their team during Gather Round. And as for the fairness aspect, well, I would say, to channel it South Australian, if you sort out Victorian teams travelling 6 times against us travelling 10 times, then I'll talk to you about Gather Round.
I've never asked this before. Are you Victorian by birth?
I am, but...
Just wanted to double check.
I feel like
I wasn't sure if you're from the other side of the border.
I'm a sympathiser right now. I do think that's just overly simplistic thinking. And it's not necessary. In fact, I think you would waste a showdown Gather Round. You want the Crows and the Power with a big drawing team with them to maximum. That'd be the 2 biggest crowds traditionally there.
Well, that's going to play out over the next few years. We're going to have lots of people arguing about that, aren't we?
The one thing I will say, I'll give you this much. You should never play an Adelaide team twice. So in this 4-year block, the Bulldogs and Carlton have done their bit. No more playing Port or the Crows from here.
That's the significant disadvantage.
So you never have it happen twice.
Yeah.
I give
what about the push that's going to come now? How would it have worked if we took it to Sydney next year and Queensland the year after?
Well, I think Adelaide would have been sad. You don't have
Are you
to...
sure you haven't got South Australian blood in you?
You didn't have to go far to have the old tales of the Grand Prix. And, it's a
that's
very
a sore point still.
scar still. So, no, they'd be sad if they lost it. That much I know.
Because I know Horse has already referred to it. John Longmire, the coach in City, said, probably work up here.
He had a beautiful smile when he said that too. So we'll ask our two coaches from Queensland and New South Wales that exact question. I reckon just the last point around the way it was fixtured, there's something about the Friday night doubleheader if you can get it right. So there's a couple to come, and usually it's Perth at the end, which ends up being sort of quite a late night.
Yeah.
The school holiday early start into a game that was just ever so slightly later, that worked. Like from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock to be transfixed by footy, and so many people were. The games are probably too long to make it a regular thing like the NRL does. Their time frame of the game suits perfectly. Yeah. But there is something about the Friday night doubleheader that from time to time works.
Well, gather round work, then it's going to work again big time.